Good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And thanks for coming on tonight. I'm coming on. I wasn't really um, prepared to do this particular video, but I have been looking into some of the early on things that have been happening when the Idaho Four murders happened. And I had gone back over the press conferences, and I've been reviewing some of the statements that's been released by the coroner, by some of the parents of the victims. So I was working on a completely different video from a different angle because I was trying to gain some insight in. I feel like when the murders first initially happened, there was a different position um, by law enforcement, by the coroner, by some of the family members, just their take on everything and some of the things that they said initially. And over time, over this past year, some of those things, I won't say they've changed, but they developed into different things. And that happens when more information is uncovered. But my point is, I feel like some of the initial statements were probably the most raw and most truthful. And with the gag order, of course, we're not hearing things as much. So I wanted to go back and review a lot of what was said. For example, there was the first two press conferences. And at one point, at one of the press conferences, there was a statement by law enforcement stating he said that the two alive roommates were there, but he never referred to them or called them eyewitnesses. So that's kind of, um, it rides that fine line. And also it's a little concerning because you want to believe what law enforcement is saying. And if they sat down with both of the roommates, we know that one of the roommates allegedly saw someone walk past. So to refer and kind of correct the reporter that was asking the question, and you kind of go over and say, well, I never referred to them as being an eyewitness. I said they were there. So it's little things like that that I noticed, and bigger things too. So I'm thinking about putting together something more specific. I'm trying to find the actual clips of some of the commentary. There was a comment made by Zaina's dad that she talked to him the night of the murders, and she said that she was at home and watching a movie with Ethan, and allegedly that was at midnight, right? So the reason I'm bringing that up, for example, is because it's been said that Ethan and Zaina got home at 1:45 a.m. Well, that is in direct conflict with Zaina's dad stating allegedly that she told him that Ethan and her were at home and it was around midnight and they were watching a movie. So I'm trying to put these things together, but I also want to get the audio also to play it. So that's what I've been focusing on top of being very extremely busy. I've been getting some stuff together, and I have an event on Monday, so I've been very busy. But that's what I'm working on as far as the Idaho 4 case, putting these contradictions and conflicting statements together and laying them out. So when I get a chance to come up and breathe after doing some things for my um, event on Monday. I get a chance to actually read the news, and just so sadly, I'm seeing that the house is now up to be demolished on December 28th, and it's concerning. I'm not going to hold you long, but I do want to go over it. I like to have details and providing information. So I want to go back to an article that was in September when the house was going to be demolished in October. And I want to read that article. Then I want to fast forward to now. So I'm going to read an article from the OhioStatesman.com, and it's dated September 8th, 2023, and it's by Kevin Fixler. And it reads as follows. The boarded up rental home on King Road in Moscow is where 4 University of Idaho students were stabbed to death November 13th, 2022. The university plans to demolish the 6-bedroom, 3-bathroom house that sits near the U of I campus's New Greek Road. For the second time, the University of Idaho is delaying the destruction of the Moscow home where 4 students were slain in November, now deciding to do so indefinitely after the trial of murder suspect Brian Kohlberger was recently postponed to an unspecified date. University leaders met Thursday and chose again to wait on tearing the off-campus property on King Road in October under their prior plan. The school, which took ownership of the 6-bedroom home earlier this year, initially planned to demolish the most visible reminder of the students' deaths before the start of the fall semester last month. The U of I has not set a new demolition date, but committed to hold off until at least mid-December after the semester ends. University spokesperson Jody Walker told the Idaho Statesman on Thursday. No plans have been made for what will come of the property once the home is gone, she said. The King Row house will not come down this semester, Walker said in a phone interview. We will be moving forward, continuing to prepare for that eventual end. The university is trying to balance what's right for students, continues to focus on their education, and do right by the memories of the students that were lost, she added. The 4 victims were U of I seniors, Kaylee Goncalves and Madison Mogan, both 21, and junior Zainer Kanono and freshman Ethan Chapman, both 20. The 3 women rented the King Row home with 2 housemates who went unharmed in the attack. Chapin was Kanono's boyfriend and stayed over for the night. Kohlberger, 28, is accused of unaliving the 4 students with a large fixed blade knife on November 13th. He faces 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. Prosecutors announced they plan to seek the death penalty if Kohlberger is convicted. The university ran into pushback from some of the victims' families after it announced its plan to raze the home in August. 3 of the families questioned destroying it and any possible remaining evidence with it ahead of Kohlberger's then October trial date. Shannon Gray, attorney for the Goncalves family, told the Statesman at the time. The university changed course and agreed to wait to pull down the property until October. But Kohlberger waived his right to a speedy trial late last month, delaying his capital murder trial indefinitely and raising questions about the home's demolition timeline yet again. I think all of the families assumed that the King Road address would not be demolished until the trial's over, Gray told the Statesman by email after Kohlberger's trial was delayed. The university, however, was non-committal Thursday about waiting until after Kohlberger's future trial date, which has yet to be set. The court previously cleared the home for destruction, and both the prosecution and Kohlberger's defense have raised no issues with that plan, Walker said. I think anything's possible, she said. We certainly want to do what is best for our students, the university, and keeping in mind the families as well. It's a huge decision and a huge moment in their lives. The university will provide advance notice of 2 weeks before the home is destroyed once it is scheduled, Walker said. The property is now cleared of all of the victims' belongings and is expected to take a matter of hours to demolish and dispose of the material, she said. Gray did not respond to a statesman request for additional comment Thursday. Continuing to oversee the King Road home has come with not only a heavy emotional cost for the university, but a financial one too. After Moscow police completed their investigation at the home, law enforcement no longer provided around the clock surveillance. In February, when the homeowner donated it to the university, the U of I hired a third party security company to watch over the property. This week, it transitioned to university security officers. The daily cost to secure the home is about $600, Walker said, or approximately $131,000 since the university took ownership. Meanwhile, the university continues work on developing a memorial garden at a yet to be determined on campus location. Designs for the garden honoring the four King Road victims, as well as other U of I students who have died over the years, will be produced this semester as part of class projects and courses at the university's College of Art and Architecture. The university is in the midst of fundraising efforts towards the student-driven project, Walker said. A completion timeline and estimated cost of the memorial garden won't be known until after the university decides on the design, she said. Okay, so let's pause for a minute. It's kind of like, where do you want to start? So this was back in September. It was again postponed because the expectation was that Brian Koberger's trial would start October the 2nd. Of course, we all know it didn't start. He waived, excuse me, he waived his right to a speedy trial. And since then, we have not had a trial date set for Mr. Koberger. In the meantime, what this does for the university and their plans is it's an undetermined indefinite date as of now. Whereas the family of the victims, some of the family of the victims, they want the building to remain for possible jury possibly going to see the property, possibly further evidence. If there are any issues, they could always go back. And for the most part, it's looked upon as you rather have it than not. Meaning, if there is some type of controversy with spacing, if you say this is 20 feet and it's really 15, you could go back, you could confirm it, you could measure it. If there was an issue with the view, if you were looking into the property with no blinds or nothing, no window treatment, how would that look from different angles? That would be hard. That would be hard to demonstrate and imagine if you don't have the property. Would also be hard to demonstrate if it's at night and it's late and there's a light on. You would want to see what can you see from this angle, that angle, from driving by, from standing outside. You would also want to validate statements, right? If I'm saying someone walked past me, for example, I would want to know what would that look like if they're coming from a certain location or a certain area. It could be the distance and spacing. We know that the house has an unusual layout. So the spacing between rooms, the angle if I'm looking out of one door and turning my head and looking in the direction of another bedroom, for example. What would that look like? Because laying it out on paper and seeing it in person is different. There may be a wall there. Um, the staircases, are they closed? Are they open? Sometimes you have steps that don't have anything underneath. There's just so many questions, right? In this case, unfortunately, there's so many things that we don't know. There's so many things that we question because we're trying to imagine what this looks like, what it feels like. What happened when Brett Payne says he came upon the second floor and he was able to see a female body of Zaina. We don't know what that looks like. We don't know where the stairs are in comparison to him seeing her bedroom. We just don't know we don't know the distance. We don't know the angle. We can only have a description. And I know as recent as, within the last 4 to 6 weeks, law enforcement was out again, allegedly taking some pictures or video or maybe measurements. I really didn't look into that story because I thought it was like a cockamamie story, a fake story. The reason I thought it was a fake story and I didn't do a video on it or talk about it is because it was at the same timing that the IgG DNA, touch DNA was going on. And I said, oh, this is like perfect timing. They're back at the house and they're supposed to be taking like some scanning of the property. And I'm thinking, wouldn't this have been done a year ago? Why would they be scanning the property a year ago? Scanning has been around for 20 years. So wouldn't they have scanned the property a year ago? Why are they back out at this property? And I just thought it was full of crap. I thought they were trying to, unfortunately, do something like still look for evidence or new evidence because they hadn't been out there. And again, if the property is torn down, what if something else comes up? Because my concern is if you have a scan, if you have a video, if you take pictures, they can be altered. Anybody that takes a picture of themselves, they can go right in, change the color, change who's in the picture, change the way the person looks, make them darker, make them lighter, change the color of the clothing. Like these things can be altered. What you cannot change is that original scene. You cannot recreate that original scene. But if you have digital work, if you have digital pictures, you can change the time on them. You can change how they appear. You can clip them. You can edit them, alter them. And that's what the main issue is the integrity of this entire case and the investigation for me. So much seems to not make sense in this case, and I'm not going to go over it tonight. But when I'm coming to read this today, I'm just like so disappointed. So let's get to it. Let's read the current article. It's by ksby.com. It's titled Home Where 4 Idaho College Students Were Unalived to Be Demolished. It's dated December 15, 2023. And the writer is Alex Arger. The off-campus home where 4 University of Idaho students were unalived last year will be demolished later this month, the school announced Thursday. The new plans for demolition, set to begin on December 28th, come after multiple other attempts were paused due to some of the victims' family members voicing concern that it was premature to demolish the building before the suspect's trial ends. But the school, which was given ownership of the home after the murder, said its decision to demolish the residence during winter break is an attempt to decrease further impact on the students who live in that area. It is the grim reminder of the heinous act that took place there, University of Idaho President Scott Green said. While we appreciate the emotional connection some family members of the victims may have to this house, it is time for its removal and to allow the collective healing of our community to continue. Neither the prosecutors nor the defense team representing the suspect, Brian Koberger, had an objection to the demolition, but Koberger's team plans to visit the home one final time before December 28th to take photographs, measurements, and possibly gather drone footage of the house. Some of the victims' families, however, still voiced their opposition. Today was especially hard because we were notified that they plan on tearing down the house on December 28th, just 3 days after Christmas. Steve Goncalves, father of victim Kaylee Goncalves, wrote on Facebook Thursday night, "Here is the thing with the house. I get it. It's an eyesore. It makes the community and college sad. It's a house of horrors," so on and so forth. Yes, Kaylee unfortunately died in that house, but more importantly, Kaylee lived a fun, happy life in that house. So, my point is, when the house is torn down, it will be a very sad day for me. Salt in a wound that never heals. The home, which sits on King Road in Moscow, Idaho, housed Zaina Kernodle, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, and two other roommates in the fall of 2022. On November 13th of that year, Mogen, Goncalves, Kernodle, and her boyfriend Ethan Chapman were murdered in their beds. Though weeks went by without a suspect, Koberger was arrested on December 30th, 2022, and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and felony burglary. He pleaded not guilty to the charges. A trial date has still not been set. So how do we have a demolition date before a trial date? How? How? It's just extremely sad. I don't think it's not about the emotional connection. It's about, is there any evidentiary value in the property? We know so many things, and we always have to go back to the property at King Road. We know allegedly one of the students had a stalker. We've been told that Brian Koberger was outside of the house stalking the girls, had been to the location 12 times, right, allegedly. We know from viewing police footage that there had been many parties at the house, large gatherings, large parties. We know that the design of the house is not a typical design, whereas the day of the murders, there were multiple cars parked in front of the house. And from the front of the house, you are looking at the first floor. However, from the rear of the house, if you were to enter the house, you'd be entering at the second floor. We know that in the inside of the house was set up with 2 bedrooms on each floor, 1 bathroom on each floor. We know that there were no victims on the first floor. We had victims on the 3rd floor that were unalive. And we have also victims on the 2nd floor that were unalived. The house itself is facing many, many challenges because the layout is something that you can't grasp just from looking at the layout on paper. I think the challenge will be that there may be potentially a desire to see the property itself and how everything is functioning, positioning, um, that sliding glass door, the the second floor, entering from the second floor. I'm feeling almost speechless because it almost feels it almost feels like before this case can even go to trial, there is some effort that is really pushing back. If there are questions, if there are concerns, how do you how do you meet in the middle to answer them, right? You know, you don't want to say the wrong thing. You try to have an opinion that's going to be respectful of the family and of law enforcement. There's not too many murder cases where you are going to be challenged with a layout such as this house. I think there's going to be issues with the sound. Is there an echo in the house? If you're on the second floor, can you hear a struggle on the floor above you? That would be the third floor. How does sound travel through the house? I know that the crime scene it will be hard to take a jury through that crime scene, walking them physically through that crime scene, because there's going to be a lot of areas that is going to be different, right? I'm sure the victim's belongings have been removed. I'm sure that in some instances, um, there's going to be areas that are just completely taped off and you cannot cross. I can only say that I hope that crime scene has been thoroughly documented. I just honestly know you cannot establish that space as it is again. If that space is torn down, you would not be able to get the scene as it is, as it was. I want to read one last article because this is hard. This is hard for me. You know, I know the angle that the university is working from, and I can appreciate that their overall view is to move forward and they feel that this is the right time. Their interest is on the students that are there, that are actively on campus and helping them to feel safe. And it should not be conflicting with also addressing the needs of the victims and their families. This should not be a competing interest. The need for the crime scene is not only as a reminder for those students that seeing it daily, because it's not going to change what happened if it's torn down. What it's going to do is make that prosecution even harder. Because if things can't be properly addressed, if there is a reason to go back to take additional photographs, you won't have that opportunity. If there's a need for the jurors to walk through that property, you will not have that opportunity. And more importantly, if there's a need to go back for additional evidence, finding evidence, receiving tips, possibly finding someone else involved, you will not have that crime scene. You will merely have pictures and video and scans that can be altered, edited, deleted, clipped, and you have no power in that. You could take one finger and delete all of that evidence and it's gone. And that's the scarier part about it all. I feel just terrible for the families. If it could not be at a worse time, the holidays, just passing the 1 year anniversary. Then you have another holiday, and they're going to have to face this. Just does not seem fair. And I don't know how much more they can do because this is their third attempt. This is the university's third attempt to tear down this property. It's just extremely sad. And all I can say is they better get this prosecution right. You only have one time, no mistakes. The last article is coming from krem.com. It's dated December 15th. It's by Selena Van Heine, and it's titled Family of Idaho Murder Victim Expresses Frustration with Decision to Tear Down Home. As the suspect's defense team gains access to the home, the family of Kaylee Goncalves says they feel their opinion on what to do with the home is not a priority. The home where 4 University of Idaho students were unalived last year will be demolished at the end of the month. According to the university, the house on King Road in Moscow will be demolished starting Thursday, December 28th at 7 a.m. Additionally, the defense team for the suspect, Brian Kohlberg, will have access to the house this week. The decision to tear down the house was made to decrease further impact on other students living in the neighborhood. It is the grim reminder of the heinous acts that took place there, University of Idaho President Scott Green said. While we appreciate the emotional connection some family members of the victims may have to this house, it is time for its removal and to allow the collective healing of our community to continue. Kohlberger's defense team will be at the house taking pictures and measurements of the area on Thursday and Friday. Once they are done, the university will start preparing for the demolition. Demolition is scheduled to begin on December 28th and is expected to last several days. The house is a daily reminder, said Jody Walker, the communications manager for U of I. We'll never forget. We can't forget, but we can heal. We can come together and we can begin to move into the next phase. The family of Kaylee Goncalves, one of the victims, has previously shared their reservations about demolishing the home. On Friday, the Goncalves family attorney Shannon Gray released the following statement. This is hard, y'all. Let us ask this. Isn't it better to have the King Road house and not need it than need the house and not have it? That has been our question to the prosecution and the University of Idaho for the entire time the demo of the King Road has been an issue. But why is it even up for discussion? This is one of the most horrific crimes in the history of Idaho, and the University of Idaho wants to destroy one of the most critical pieces of evidence in the case. And it is also important to make note that there is now a demolition date before there is even a trial date set. This alone speaks volumes. It is obvious from the two recent visits to the house by both the prosecution and the defense that there is still evidentiary value in having the King Road house still standing. There may be additional discovery by either party that prompts one side or the other to go back to the scene of the crime. There has always been a dialogue about their 3D imaging, or they are building a model to replicate the home, etc. First and foremost, what a waste of state money and resources, and secondly, nothing replaces the real thing. Jurors are notoriously unpredictable and they tend to make decisions on a variety of facts and circumstances. It would be foolish of us to try and foresee what they would want or need to make a just verdict in this case. The family has stressed tirelessly to the prosecution and the University of Idaho the importance, evidentiary and emotionally, that the King Road house carries, but nobody seems to care enough. It's like screaming into a void. Nobody is listening, and everyone tells you how sorry they are for the decision, but the family's opinion isn't a priority. Victims' families have a voice and should be heard and listened to. Boise-based criminal defense attorney David LeBroy said juries will sometimes want to walk through a space, especially one as large and complex as the house on King Road. In this case, however, Leroy said both sides have time and technology to recreate the structure. Because we'll have diagrams and perhaps three-dimensional recreations, lots of photographs and lots of videos, I will not expect the jury to be lost in the special relations in the home and understanding the crime scene, he explained. I think it makes it even a bigger issue. Because the property is large, because the layout is different, I will not say it's complex, but it's just different. I think with it being a 3-story home, and some of the nuances would be the sound. You cannot recreate the quality of sound. What's something sound like? What is the level of echoing? If you're on the first floor, the second floor, the third floor, in between. is going to matter in this case. It's going to matter. I think that the greater issue will be focusing on the entry and exit points. How did this happen with no call to 911, allegedly no call to 911 until noon? What was the sound like? What is the distance, the spacing? How does the sound travel? If something falls or crashes, what does that sound like? If Murphy the dog was barking, what does that sound like? If one was to scream, yell, be fighting, what does that sound like? What does that sound like from the second floor, hearing something that's happening on the third floor? What does that sound like with distance and space if both parties are on the second floor? What does it sound like when doors are closed? What does it sound like when doors are open? I think ideally, yes. Can you create a model that looks like 1122 King Road? Absolutely. With architecture, I think it could be drawn to a fair scale to appear like the house. The appearance is not the issue. I think we all have forged in our mind the appearance of the house from the front and mostly the back. I think things that you cannot recreate would be visually, how does this property look at night with the lights on, with the lights off, with coverings, without window treatment? I think something that they're not anticipating when something is not clear and you're on a jury and you have questions, you have additional questions, things that you cannot foresee. When someone is trying to gain an understanding, they're processing testimony, they may be writing down questions. Because there's so much video and surveillance evidence, I think it's going to be quite of a challenge to demonstrate what happened, how it sounded. I think this will lead again down that road of reasonable doubt. Because if Brett Payne could come onto the second floor and see the body of Zaina, why did not the roommate on the second floor call 911? If Brett Payne could see the body of Zaina when he entered the second floor, why did the roommate not visibly see Zaina? Moreover, if one is fighting, screaming, if the dog is barking, one would not hear that late or early in the morning. With the issues of all of the doors having locks allegedly on them, Zaina's dad was there about a week prior to the murders, changing her bedroom lock. If one of the roommates allegedly had a stalker, if allegedly one roommate saw someone walk past and allegedly heard sounds, crying, it just begs to wonder why things were not done differently. If you came out of the bedroom and someone walked past you, and also Brett Payne saying that Zaina's body was visible when he entered the second floor, why was 911 not called until almost noon? If Murphy the dog is heard barking, if there was defensive wounds, two of the victims, and there's some fighting back, what was the condition of those wounds? Were things turned over? Were they on the floor? If there is a footprint, a latent footprint, allegedly outside of the live roommate on the second floor's bedroom, did you not hear someone outside of your bedroom door? To help aid in the jury's understanding, the jury's job is the fact finder. And one thing about fact finding, you have to gain an understanding. And right now, this part, just causes, it causes one to think that there's going to be a lot of issues. What I'm going to do, as I said in the beginning of this video, I'm going to gather the information to go over the conflicting information that I'm finding out from the initial start when the murders initially happened. And I'm now comparing what has been said. For example, if the two alive roommates were at home at 1 a.m., how can they state that Zane and Ethan were at the party until 1:45 a.m.? How could they know that? If they weren't at the party, they were at home. I can recall, and I'm going to try to have it documented, when law enforcement was putting out requests that if anyone knew the whereabouts of Ethan and Zaina after 9 p.m., they wanted that information and that you could contact law enforcement. They wanted to know where Ethan and Zaina were after 9 p.m. They knew that at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., they were at the Chi Omega fraternity house party, right? But they could not track where Ethan and Zaina were after 9 p.m. The only person that came and said they were home at 1:45 a.m. was the alive roommate on the second floor. How would she know that if she was at home at 1 a.m.? How would she know that? And why didn't they know that? If the police interviewed the two alive roommates after the murders, why did they not know that Ethan and Zaina came home at 1:45 a.m.? Why would they have to make these public pleas to find out their whereabouts after 9 p.m. if one of the alive roommates already knew that they were at the party? It doesn't make sense. It's so many conflicting statements. And it almost feels like tearing down the house I hate to say it, I do not like to say these things, but it's almost as if it's a way to conceal what has happened, to cover, the evidence. You don't want to think like that. I just don't feel that it's a matter of money. And I don't understand what you would get from tearing down the house. If you set aside enrollment at the university, if you set that to the side, what is the benefit? What is the benefit? Did anyone test to see if that second floor that it looked like it had blood, was that blood? The front of the house was like a ledge on the second floor tier. Did anybody check? What happened to the ladder that was on the side of the house in the beginning? There was a ladder on the side of the house. What happened to that ladder? At some point, the the right thing has to come out. And that is really, I think, what the parents and the majority of the community want. They want answers. They want to know the truth. And they want to know the steps that's being taken are in the best interest of justice. And I know so many people want justice for these kids. And when you see the university fighting so hard to move forward, to have this done with very little consideration for the families, it's beyond sad. So I'm going to continue to do my part, and I'm going to continue to work for justice for these four of these 4 victims. This feels like it's going to be a long road, and I hope that we get there. I hope that they're doing everything that they can to uncover what happened and preserve the evidence. I do not feel that this is going to bring any peace to not see the property. I think it's almost like a greater concern that they will not be able to go back, particularly because if the verdict is not guilty or a hung jury, we're going to have more problems. And if we have to go back to the beginning, we will not have the property to start over. And that is the unfortunate part of it all. That's the scary part. That is the risk that they're taking. And you can't come back from that. They're moving forward on Mr. Brian Kohlberger no matter what. And we don't know what's to come from the evidence that Judge is going to determine the defense can receive. But we can only hope that the truth comes out and that justice is served. And if they're going to tear down the house, we can only hope and pray that they preserve as much of the evidence, both the prosecution and defense. And we can only go forward. I think it is a huge mistake. I don't think it's going to give them the peace that they're saying that's needed. I don't think so. It feels very wrong. It doesn't feel right. It feels wrong. However, they are intent on tearing this house down. There hasn't even been a trial date set, and they're going to do it no matter what. So we will have to consider this. We will have to consider the actions of the university because they own the property. I think they're doing what's in their best interest and overlooking the needs of the families and also the evidentiary value of the property, because this is allegedly the murder scene and they don't care. So thank you for checking out this video. I want you to stay safe, stay smart, stay savvy. I am going to continue to gather the information on the video to demonstrate the conflicting information and the timeline. But I'm just blown away. I'm extremely disappointed. I'm extremely disheartened. It's forcing me to come on here when I had no plans on coming on here tonight. I've had such a long, hard day. But I'm just here to let you know, inform you that the plan is to tear down 1122 King Road on December 28th, right after Christmas. This has got to be so hard on the families. I'm so sorry. Um, I just have no words. I just have no words. So, thank you for checking out this video. I hope to see you in a future video, and check out some of my other videos. Take care and be well, my friends. Good night, everybody. Bye.